Hello, back again with another tier list video. I've been having fun with these, so I figured I'd do another one. This one's going to be on the League of Villains or villains in general in My Hero Academia, just from God, Good, Cool, Barely Remember, and Trash tier. So let's get into it. Starting with one of Overhaul's villains, I barely remember this one. I think this is the one he kind of fuses with at some point. I think he uses a gun, so I'm gonna put. I think he was cool, even though I kind of barely remember him, but I remember him enough, I believe. So I'll put him in cool. On to Dabi, easily God tier. Spoilers for the manga, Toya Todoroki. That's Dabi, and it was executed perfectly. I've done multiple videos on it if you want to check them out. He's fucking awesome and easily my favorite here. Like, genuinely my favorite. Now on to Barely Remember. So this will kind of differentiate. I don't remember this character like in the slightest, so I'll put them in Barely Remember compared to Cool. Gentle Criminal. I'll put him in cool as well. I don't think he was the greatest villain, but his backstory was pretty cool, as well as how he contrasted Deku and all that. This is actually drawn to my attention that I don't see his sidekick Labrada or Labrava, sorry, on this list, but she's cool as well, so we'll just put them together in cool. Next is Gigantomachia, and again, just cool. Not much to him. He's essentially just better Nomu, functions a little better, so there you go. He's cool. This is one of the people from Overhaul's group that fought against Kirishima and Facum, and I feel like I'm putting everyone here, but he's cool. Toga is good with, I'd say, what we got in the League of Villains, My Villain Academia arc. We got some insight into how her quirk kind of shaped who she was and her desire to do the things that she is doing. I think her and Twice's relationship is really good, well depicted, and easily I'd put her in the good tier. Next is the other one that Kirishima and Facum fought. Also, I'll put them in cool. Not much to some of these characters, but again, if they're cool, I just think they're good enough as just a villain that may not have too much depth compared to Dabi and ones like him. Next is Magni, and I like her presence in the story. I think that it's cool how everyone, I think, called her Big Sis. If I remember, that may not be accurate, but from what I'm remembering, they did like her, and she was a cool character. Therefore, she's going in cool with the rest of these cool characters. Next is Kurogiri, and I just did a video on Kurogiri and Shirakumo. I think the backstory is super interesting, and I definitely put him in good. Okay, never mind. I was blind from earlier, and I missed Labrava's right here. So again, just gonna put her with Gentle. I'll put her next to Gentle, just to be nice. Next is someone else from Overall's group that I barely remember, to be honest. I remember this character more than the one in Barely Remember, so I guess I'll put them in cool, but I don't remember them too much. Next is Moonfish, and honestly, like, I'd put him in good. He doesn't have much development or anything, but he's just a good, creepy villain that I think added a lot to the arc that he was in. Mr. Compress. So Mr. Compress is one that I feel had his backstory just shoved in there at the end of the first war arc next to Dobby's, and it just pales in comparison. It wasn't nearly as good. And I feel like overall as a character, he's not nearly as good as any of these characters. That I put in good or god tier. So I'm gonna have to put him in cool as well. And honestly, while I'm here, I'm just gonna put barely remember for that character because I do barely remember them. Moving on to the Bakugo lookalike, who Deku has an awesome fight against. Again, I would put them in cool. I feel like the majority are just going to be cool, and I actually forgot this one's name, just blanking on it. But I remember his cool fight with Deku, as well as his second fight with Deku, where he just gets destroyed. Oh, Muscular. Muscular is his name. So he's muscular, and there's not much more to say about that. Next is Mustard, and honestly, if anyone's gonna have to be in trash, I guess I don't wanna put them in trash, though, because they are kinda, like, cool for what they I don't know, I like their quirk. I thought it was interesting using the mustard gas in the Forest arc, training arc, whatever that was. And I do remember their fight with Tetsu Tetsu kind of fondly enough, so I guess I'll put them in cool. Next, I barely remember, I think this was a Nomu from that same arc, but there's not much here, it's just a Nomu. Overhaul. I would put Overhaul in God. He was just really well done in his own arc, as well as his motivations with his backstory. And there was a lot to it, and I think it was well done. They've kind of fumbled the bag after this point. I like his talk with Deku, but if that's all there was, it does feel a bit unfulfilling. But I talk about more of that in some other videos if you want to watch. Overall, though, I'd say a God tier character compared to the rest. Next is another one that I barely remember, and another one that I barely remember. This one I do remember. He fought against Sun Eater, and I thought that was cool, but it was just cool. Spinner, in my opinion, has gone up to God tier, especially with these recent chapters where he's been this focal point and we see just all the discrimination he's faced, how it's turned to rage and anger and him wanting to be somebody. And he does care about Shigaraki a lot and wants to be Shigaraki's hero. And while we're here, I'm gonna put Stain, who he was motivated by, also in God tier, hero killer. His whole ideology and conviction was just portrayed fucking amazing. And I think that arc was actually very well done, both in the anime and the manga. It's one of my favorites. So yeah, hero killer Stain and his supporter Spinner, who he motivated easily in God tier, as well as by Shigaraki. He's also in God tier. I think his development throughout the series has just been perfect. How he went from the beginning of the series being this really kind of reserved and mumbling idiot a lot of the time. He was very just uncoordinated and not that smart. And how he builds throughout the series until eventually, sadly, after becoming kind of this main threat, All For One takes over his body. So I'm someone who's not too much of a fan of all this, and I don't know where it's going. But overall, I'd still have to say, as a character himself, regardless of what All For One does, he is a god tier character. Next is someone that I barely remember. I know that he also fought against Sun Eater, but he just seemed less important than the other one who looked cooler. Twice, also God tier. I think he's easily there. The way he is a good person who really cares about his friends, and we see against Hawks how dedicated he is to saving his friends and how heartbroken he is that Hawks could betray him because he was just trying to be nice to Hawks and help him because he resonated with what Hawks was telling him about his cause. He is or was a good person up until his death, and he did save his friends in his dying act. So I thought that was portrayed beautifully, and he's easily a god tier character, just really tragic. And I miss Twice a lot. And last, I'm just gonna put him in trash because we didn't have anyone in trash. I also barely remember him, so there you go, trash tier. But yeah, this is it for this list. I think one of My Hero Academia's strong points throughout the entire thing has been its villains. As you can see, Six in God tier is really awesome, and I love all these characters there. Even the good characters as well, done really well. And depending on what happens to Kurogiri as well as Toga, I can see them both going up into God tier by the end of this current arc. All the characters in Cool are just cool characters. They don't have as much depth and backstory and was fleshed out as much as the others, but also they're good and they serve their purpose. There's only a few I barely remember, and the majority is actually from the overhaul arc. I feel like just because of the masks and lack of personality or screen time, it just kind of made that happen. And then the one I put in trash tier was just because I needed someone there, and I also barely remembered him. So yeah, that's it for this video. Comment if you agree, disagree, thoughts, anything. Please subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.